There's a brand new Yooka-Laylee game.
But is it better or worse than the original?
Hot take. Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. We got a code sent in to us from Team 17, the publishers of this game, and we are pretty excited to play this because we're longtime fans of Rare, going way back to when we were kids.
Not just Rare, but also the genre. 2D
Yeah.
platformers. That's my game type.
Yeah, you don't really see that often anymore. But for those of you that don't know, that may not understand where Yooka-Laylee came from, a long time ago there was a game that was being kickstarted by a bunch of former Rare employees to kind of recreate what Banjo and Kazooie was. Now, the game came out kind of mixed.
The expectations were high because you
yeah.
had basically everyone was calling Playtonic Rare 2.0.
Yeah.
It was a big Kickstarter raising about, I know it's 3.5 million in Canadian dollars, but for anyone else watching, you can do the conversion.
Yeah.
But then it came out to a little bit mediocre reviews.
Yeah, so basically, what I played the game myself, from what I could tell, it felt very close to what Banjo-Kazooie was, but it didn't take a lot of the modern game designs that we've learned from years of game making. Honestly, it felt like a really old game that had a lot of faults and problems with it.
I had the same impression. I didn't like the camera in it. And this is a little nitpick, but the gibberish speak. Back on Ocarina of Time, you had one soundbite of like, bing, and then you read it.
Yeah.
But here, while you're reading, you have to hear like, yeah, 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 all the time, and I hate that.
That's a callback. There's a whole bunch of aspects that are callbacks to older game design, but there were limitations back then of things that they couldn't do. Yep. Working with the limits isn't a bad idea. They're welcome to do that and recreate aspects of it. But I think a lot of people just didn't really like. They didn't like the controls. Sometimes the graphics were mixed, so a lot of it just didn't really come together. It's not the best game, but
it wasn't a bad game either.
It wasn't a bad game. What we're looking at here, though, is the same group, Playtonic, taking what they were trying to do with Banjo-Kazooie and recreate that. Now they're trying to recreate Donkey Kong Country with this new game, which essentially is a Donkey Kong Country-like experience, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair.
They're not shying away from it. You look at the trailer, you're going left to right, just like Donkey Kong Country. The controls are very similar.
Or right to left in some instances, too. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got the... up and down even.
Yeah.
And you roll... You got the roll, and you've got your partner mechanic, where if you get hit, you lose your partner, and then you kind of lose one mechanic. So in this game, specifically Yooka-Laylee, when you lose the Bat-Laylee, you can't do that little twirl, which kind of removes the double jump out of your arsenal.
There are definitely aspects here that are close to it, but I want to state this up front. We're going to get into it a lot more. I do not believe this is as good as any of the older Donkey Kong countries. In fact, there's a lot of issues with it, and we're going to be talking a lot about that because what they really did here was they took a lot of the assets they had from the 3D game that they made, and they basically cropped them into a 2D game. There are aspects of game design when you get into 3D that can be very complex and difficult to make. And I think a lot of developers still struggle making those kind of games to this day. So taking game design back to a 2D plane should make it more relatively easier to design for, I think.
It should be easier, but the thing is, when you go simpler, it's harder to do something simple very well. And that's in anything in life. Achieving great simplicity is a challenge.
Yeah. Right at the front for the art direction in this game. It's super colorful. There's a lot of really good visuals going on. You can see it in the overworld. You can see it in the levels. There is, honestly, no one level looked like another level to me. They always looked very different.
It was very beautiful. I really like the backgrounds. You can actually stop playing just to admire the backgrounds because there's just so much going on back there. And it's subtle, but you can see that they put a lot of attention to detail to what's going on back there. You have a lot of depth going on. And like you said, a lot of color, very bright, really speaks true to this brand, which is now, it's only 2 games in, but it's very appropriate.
And I don't think when you're seeing this game, I think it would be very easy for people to say, oh, it's just taking all the assets from the last game, moving it forward. It really doesn't feel like they just sandwiched everything in. There are definitely unique assets here. There's stuff they actually had to make for this world, and it feels like a visually impressive game. It runs at a consistent 60 frames per second, I think, across all platforms. I might be wrong on that, but our experience here was playing it on PC, and I played it on multiple systems that I have. No matter which one I played it on, it really ran well, running at like top resolution for me.
You've got some cool lighting effects too, which you can see light reflecting off metal pieces and everything. So everything just I don't think I don't need more from my art direction and 2D platformer. This is really good stuff. And then you've even got some options. I don't know if you want to get into that right away, but
sure.
You can flip the options, which cool, but not quite practical.
There's things. So throughout the game, there's these tonics that you can pick up, and the tonics can be unlocked in various ways by finding them and paying for them. There's things that go into that as well, which we'll talk about later. But what's really cool is that the tonics do grant you either abilities in the game or visual things. One of the visual things, which was crazy, was a Game Boy mode. And you can basically make the game look like it's a Game Boy resolution with original Game Boy colors. You can modify this a little bit by utilizing different things. Like I could have this resolution with black and white if I wanted, but I gotta be honest, this was nuts. Like I could barely see what was going on, and it's kind of funny because when you use certain tonics, if they really give you a benefit in the game, you're going to lose the ability to earn a bunch of quills, which are essentially the coins in this game. And what really made me upset was this made it harder to play, and I didn't get an additional multiplier for having used this mode, which was just really frustrating for me.
So let's step back to the foundation of what the core mechanic of this game, because it introduces a very new, unique idea, which I like, and that's when you start off the game, you are thrown into the final level of the game right off the bat, which is called the Impossible Lair.
Yeah.
And you will most likely die because it's a very hard level. And then the rest of the game is based around going around all these levels, rescuing bees, of all things.
Yeah.
And these bees act as your guardians or soldiers.
Like a shield. Basically, yeah, you get a larger health bar, basically, for all the bees that you collect.
More hit points. There's no life bar. But I think there's 42 bees you can collect in total. So if you get all the bees in the game, you can go back to the Impossible Lair and you can essentially get 42. You can get hit 42 times before you die.
Yeah, and theoretically, you could play this game with a lot less of the bees and probably get through a lot more of the level. The difficulty, though, is that, well, like we talked about with the original Yooka-Laylee, where the controls weren't perfect, there's a lot here that isn't working for me. Let's talk about the controls, because I really can't stress this enough. These controls are all over the map. Whether you're underwater, whether you're doing traditional 2D side-scrolling above water, or anything like that, it feels like everything is just weak. Like your controls don't have the right attack, like your movements don't have the right movement. It just doesn't feel like it really comes together for me.
So all you've got is really jump and roll.
Yeah.
Those are your base attacks. But you're saying that when you're... well, I kind of felt it too. The roll, you either come out of the roll... The timing of the roll is just weird.
Yeah, if you don't do the roll just at the right time, sometimes an enemy will actually hurt you. And when you actually lose Laylee, which is the bat, you lose certain movement abilities, which, like you can see here, I'm struggling to reach that thing. That would have been a lot easier had I had Laylee with me. And that right there, that was a huge problem for me. I didn't expect the game to struggle so much with controls, because I figured, hey, it's 2D, they can make it kind of work a lot better, but it feels really restrictive and just kind of floaty all at the same time.
A little bit punishing.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're the one that's not good. You
Yes.
feel like, well, I understand 2D platformers. It's one of the oldest genres. Why can't I get this bat and this chameleon to do what I want?
Yeah.
Now, what was it that you were just mentioning? I lost it, but the bat was the double
Laylee,
mechanic.
yeah.
So if you consider that this is kind of a throwback to Donkey Kong Country, in those games you always start off with Donkey Kong, and then you could get a sidekick to get an extra ability throughout the game, but you were pretty much always start off with just Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
In this case, it's the other way around, where they actually start you off with Yooka and Laylee, and it's a punishment when you use Laylee to lose an attack.
Yep.
So I feel like the levels are actually designed mostly around the team effort.
Yep.
And then you are punished for losing, whereas in Donkey Kong Country, you are rewarded for keeping Diddy or any sidekick with you.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a different philosophy there.
And, I think a big part of this, too, is though the visuals are really impressive in a large chunk of the game, there are aspects of the visuals that are so wild and so crazy that you can't identify what's going on. A great example of this is sometimes you'll see a vine, and the vine will have little yellow thorns on it. Clearly, you don't want to touch that vine. But some points, the vine won't have the thorns, so you think, well, maybe I can jump on that, but you actually can't. And throughout every level, you will find random events or random visual obstacles that you can't really identify if they're a threat or if they're not a threat, or how do I attack it? Is it attacking me? can I attack it right now or can I not attack it right now, it really becomes a mess visually. And for me personally, it made it very difficult to play. The controls seemingly get worse underwater. Wow, did I not like the underwater gameplay?
Do you ever? Why do we still put underwater levels in 2D Okay, there's one game that I liked underwater levels, and that was Rayman. Rayman Legends and Origins. I think it was called Origins. Those, I don't know. They did it right. It was the only time I enjoyed underwater.
I'm not saying you can't do underwater properly. I've played whole games that take place underwater. But the thing is, with this, there was just aspects of it that felt wrong. A great way to explain this is when you have such floaty controls above land, you don't want those floaty controls underwater. And it felt like I was always at danger of being hit underwater. And there was points where you'll see save states. You'll see the save state right there. I will get hurt, and then I'll keep getting hurt, and I will keep dying, and eventually the game tells you, oh, well, here, just hold down Y, and we'll skip you through this section of the level. Never, ever do this. You need coins that you earn in the levels that are hidden all over the place. Sometimes they're hidden very well. Other times they're hidden incredibly poorly. And when you get those coins, they will unlock further levels. So never skip any part of the game, even if you're frustrated with it, because if you are at a point where you're going to get a coin, you simply won't be able to keep playing the game forward, forcing you to go back and replay the level again. So why skip it altogether?
It's one of those cheap moves that, sure, you can skip, and then later you realize I couldn't do it. And those coins is another throwback to Donkey Kong Country. It's the same thing as collecting the letters in Donkey Kong Country, the donkey. But in this case, you need those coins to progress. When you're back in the overworld, you get blocked essentially by the snake character. I forget his name. It's like Trouser, yeah. And he's like, oh, you got to pay up to move on. And so you need to collect coins, and you need to collect the quills as well.
Yes.
Are kind of your coins throughout the... Well, no, because there is a coin.
There is a coin.
It's more like your bananas from Donkey Kong
like a banana. The problem is the quills are not easy to grab sometimes. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the hit detection on them, but it doesn't feel like you're ever in a good position to get them. There's certain points when quills will rain from the sky because you've hit another quill that's a different color that has a whole bunch inside them. And sometimes the quills just disappear so quick that it feels like it's unfair, and they blink out of existence or whatever it is. It just doesn't feel like you have a lot of control here. And the thing is, I like collectathon games or going around collecting levels or collecting pieces and items and stuff, but it just feels so hollow here that it doesn't always just click. Visually too, when Yooka-Laylee dies in the world, you see the character die and just fly up into the air and then fall back down, just like you see in Donkey Kong Country. Underwater, when you die, Yooka drowns to death. And the most horrific looking thing where the character just like shakes around a little bit and then its eyes close and then it just floats there. And that's not how it dies above land, but underwater, it's creepy. Like, why aren't the visuals of this game consistent across the board? And in my opinion, it has to be some of that borrowing those assets from the previous game, that not everything really clicks together, not everything feels cohesive, because they're trying to leverage a lot of the stuff they already had.
Right. There's a lot of good ideas introduced in this game that I've never seen in other 2D platformers. The idea of throwing you at the last level and all that. But I agree with you that there's something that just feels a little off. Like, it doesn't, all these great ideas that don't quite come together.
Yeah.
And another thing that I want to address is the fact that we don't have bosses. Gone are boss level, because you have access to the final level. You'll never find another boss.
If there are bosses, we didn't actually beat the game, just want to establish that.
Disclaimer.
We played, I don't know, I got through at least half the game. I just couldn't keep playing it. Like, I'm not saying people are going to be out there that are not going to enjoy playing this game, but I just couldn't keep playing it because I was thoroughly unenjoying my experience. The amount of time I'm playing this, I'm like, I could just be playing Donkey Kong Country right now.
The level of difficulty isn't the kind of difficulty where I feel, ooh, I need to do that.
Yeah.
And, I have a Hollow Knight pin on me here. Like, Hollow Knight is a punishing game.
Yeah.
But you want to get better. You want to play more. Here, I feel like, oh, that was cheap, or oh, that's tedious.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I know I can do it after an hour of trial and error. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to talk about the impossible, like the final level itself.
Well, the impossible, yeah, that's really what this comes down to. This is a unique idea. We've seen other games in the past that have gone, oh, here's a big, powerful stage, and you can keep playing it, and maybe you have to come back later with more abilities. Well, you're not gonna you're gonna get more abilities by getting the tonics and stuff, which are, again, I like that.
Yeah.
But in the impossible layer, it doesn't feel it doesn't feel designed with skill. It feels designed in a way that's irritating. Because like I said, with the controls, if you can't rely on the controls being consistent and the effects of, let's say, if you roll into an enemy to attack them, sometimes that roll won't actually hurt that enemy because it's just how loose it feels. So if you can't rely on your basic attack, what are your chances in defeating the impossible lair?
Right.
And I think a lot of people are going to figure out how to play the game a lot better as time goes on. But I think the challenge in that, it's not the challenge of finding how to play the level better, it's a challenge on finding out the problems with the game, and that's not okay.
And you have to consider that when they are designing this, they're designing it to get you hit, because the whole point of the game is to collect hit points so you can make it further and have more chances. So there's a lot of situations which are just designed in such very minute detail to hit you, and it's almost impossible to avoid because they pretty much want to knock off as many of these bees off of you as possible. And that to me is just not good. That's not a design element I like.
Yeah.
The idea is good on paper, the execution just does not feel fun.
Yeah, I agree. That's really a big problem with me. If it was the challenge of the completion of the level because there's something to build from that, that would be cool. But it never feels like that. It constantly feels like, oh, the game didn't register this. Or, oh, I just couldn't move fast enough because whatever. It never feels like a consistent across the board. What's nice, though, is that we've got some really great music. Again, this is something that you saw in the original Yooka-Laylee. There are points when the music doesn't feel like it fits. I'm gonna be honest with that. Sometimes I'm just like, it sounds like it doesn't belong in this game, but other times it's like, yeah, that's right. That sounds good to me. That sounds like a fantastic score that you probably could hear from Banjo-Kazooie, and I like that kind of aspect, but it's just not consistent. Just like everything else in this game, it's simply not a consistent experience.
And there was nothing very iconic. I didn't find myself humming a song or just stopping to admire the song. Like, ooh, this is really good. I gotta listen to more of this. It was pleasant. It was good. I have no negative points for the song. It's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's good. Yeah, it's not like I'm going, oh boy, I need that on a soundtrack either.
Yeah.
But it felt like it was right in the world. Another thing that I really liked about this game that was really cool was the overworld. Typically, overworlds are very boring. Very just, oh, here's another stage. Go to that stage.
This is the game's one of the strong points.
Yeah.
I love the overworld. I love the collecting. So you can actually open up your pause menu and it'll show you. It's like you got to collect all these bees, and you can see all the bees. They all have names, and I think they even have a little bio.
Yeah, they just just stuff like that to care about those insignificant things.
Then you have a screen of tonics, and then you have a screen of achievements. If you like to collect things, and these tonics, some you can purchase, but a lot of them you have to find in the overworld, and they are hidden.
Yes.
And some of it requires quite a bit of creativity to find it.
Yeah.
Like, I actually really enjoyed the overworld component.
Yeah, I think the overworld is one of the reasons to go back, which is funny because for me it's not the levels. The overworld has there are enemies in the overworld. There's aspects of the overworld that are kind of fun to get around. If the entire game was based around the philosophy of making an overworld style game, they would have had a winner here.
Yeah.
But every time you go into the levels, I just found myself being pulled back. Now the overworld, though, like we said, there are aspects of the overworld like diverting water or freezing certain areas.
Fantastic idea. I love this.
And what's really cool is if there's like a book page and you have to get into the books, and that's where the levels are. When you divert the water, you get a water stage, and you get the same level, but just now it's a water
so if
stage.
you have a book, for example, in a dried up riverbed, then you figure out a way to divert the river to flood the book. Yeah, you get a flooded level.
Yeah.
And then you can shoot an ice bullet or an ice berry at the book.
Yeah.
And then all that water freezes.
Yes.
And now you have an ice level.
Yeah.
That is genius. I love that. But the thing is,
really cool.
When you're playing the levels, you should never feel like you want to go back to the overworld.
Yeah, and I don't want to put in too many spoilers. It's not like those are the only things you can look forward to. There are other variations on the worlds too, like maybe you throw in more enemies, maybe there's some sticky levels. They're neat. Sometimes, though, those modifications to the levels, though interesting and add to the gameplay and add to the difference of the thing, boy, do they not make the levels better to play? Like, they design the level to be this way.
Right.
And then when they freeze it, maybe it didn't work that well frozen. I'm not saying it happened every time. There were some certain stages where it was like, oh, this feels like it plays better this way than the other way.
Yeah, it wasn't consistent, though, in quality.
Yeah. There's a moment when you make one of the levels stickier. I'm not going to explain how, but you make the level stickier.
Use your imagination.
And the character does not, like, Yooka-Laylee does not want to move through that area well. It felt very restricting to play and awkward, and I don't know why they did that. Although it's neat to see, I was just like, but you didn't play with it in a way that made it very cool. It just felt like everything was hampered down and less traversable, which didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Again, tedious and not fun are these terms that keep coming back. Also in the overworld, we have challenges.
Yes.
So the challenges are the pages. So if you played the original was all about collecting these pages. Now these pages are characters you can interact with. They'll offer you challenges, which are pretty easy, at least the ones I've found. And when you complete the challenge, it basically terraforms the overworld and gives you access to new areas.
Yes, that's right. In the pages, I got to be honest, maybe they're supposed to be challenging for someone, but every single page I went across, they were just like mundane. You know, traditionally when it comes to 2D platforming games, you start off with very easy to understand levels that teach you the mechanics, and then as you move forward, you get far more interesting game designs and choices that have taught you something. A great example of this is the railroad cart levels in Donkey Kong.
Yes.
Right? You've learned how to make that happen, and you go back and eventually can play
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
And there are actual levels like that in this game too that have the same kind of thing. You're on a vine.
Not quite a minecart. They didn't copy it that.
Yeah, exactly.
One-to-one.
But it's close, right? And you do have those aspects here, and those things work. Thing is, you're not getting newer abilities to play the game. Yeah. You can, like I said, there are modifiers that you can get through the tonics, and that gives you different abilities, but they can't design any of those levels to utilize those mechanics. Otherwise, you have to utilize them, and then if you forgot to, you're going to miss out on sections of the level. So your character doesn't get more abilities. Your character doesn't feel like it improves. If it does, it at least didn't happen through half of the game. Up until the point that I was playing, I didn't feel like moving forward anymore, and I have a strong suspicion a lot of people that pick this up, either you're going to love this game and its mechanics and you're going to go crazy over everything and want to really go through everything, and there's a lot to do, or you're going to play it the same way I did and got to a point where you're just like, you know, I don't think there's anything left that this game has to tell me. There might be visually different levels, maybe some cool mechanics here and there, but it didn't feel like it was worth going forward.
It'll feel like more of a chore. I really want to complete 100% it because there's so many collectibles, but it's just not as rewarding. It's not like you're getting more things and you're like, okay, I'm improving. I'm getting hooked. It's just like, all right, another one checked off. Let's do this other one. So.
You know, if the tonics really just improved things where there was some unique difference to them, I would have been really excited to play with those tonics a bit more, but there was a couple tonics where it's just like, now the world's in black and white.
So we didn't talk much about it. I don't want to spend too much time, but the tonics also have some good properties. For example, when you get hit, the bat, Laylee flies around and you have a certain amount of time to catch it, for example. If you don't catch it, it leaves. So a tonic, you can have a tonic so Laylee stays around longer, giving you more chance. Now, when you do something like that, the game will also introduce a cost where it'll punish you in the sense that you'll have now a 0.9 multiplier on your quills. So if you get 100 quills, they're like, you used the tonic. Now you get 90 quills.
Yeah.
So it balances out that way.
And the thing is, you'd probably assume, oh, you don't really need those quills. You do. You're going to need the quills to purchase things, to move forward in the game. It's all connected together. This isn't like just random points that are up in the air. These are all elements you need. Like everything we talked about, if you're going to skip a chunk of the level, you might lose quills, you might miss out on getting coins. If you change the modifiers because you're not liking it playing in a level, it actually removes quills. It gets frustrating really, really quick. I would have just assumed that the visual things that don't offer any benefit, that just basically kind of make the game harder to play, would give you more quills, but it doesn't. And if you remove it while playing because you're just like, oh, this visually sucks, it takes quills away, so you're better off just leaving the game, or leaving the world, and then going back into it. Honestly, throughout the game, folks, you're going to find a lot of aspects of this where it just isn't exactly perfect. Whether it be from a smaller production, which this is, or lack of funding in certain aspects of the game. I ran through glitches and problems, both visually and mechanically. It never felt like a completely solid game all the way through, and that's kind of shocking to me, knowing where they came from. That they knew what they did wrong over there with the original Yooka-Laylee game, and they repeated those mistakes again with this. It's really weird to me that would happen.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit better in the design sense than the original Yooka-Laylee, and they have some fantastic ideas, great, unique, creative ideas here, but I feel they hurt themselves by being a callback to Donkey Kong Country. If they wouldn't have tried because that's a high bar.
It is.
And they're saying, oh, we're making a game like that, so everyone is expecting that.
Yeah.
And they're not hitting that.
Yeah, no, but the thing is, I completely agree. It's the same concept as, oh, I'm going to make a Super Mario World-like game.
Yeah.
Cool. That's one of the greatest platformers ever made. That's really hard to just say you're going to make another one because people are going to compare you against that.
Exactly. That's the benchmark.
Yeah, and so the whole time I'm playing, I'm just like, Donkey Kong Country did it better here, Donkey Kong Country did it, but that's my problem. If this is the same team that was involved with those games all the way back then, how did they not know that those were the problems that they need to fix? Like, maybe there were some issues in the older games, and I'm not saying Donkey Kong Country is perfect. There are problems with that game too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like, now that you know those problems exist from years of analytical research of people playing these games and looking at all these things, if you saw those problems, why wouldn't you fix them? Why wouldn't you restrict the levels to be a bit more in that one function? But it just feels like they fell on their hands.
And it's the same problem as the original Yooka-Laylee. They went too much to the source material and didn't quite pick up the lessons along the way.
Yeah.
So
I would like to say that this game improves a lot on 2D platforming. I just don't think it does. But if you're a fan of that older style, I think that you might enjoy the game for what it is. Like, do you think if you're a fan of Donkey Kong Country, this is worth taking a look at?
It's worth definitely trying. If you're a fan of Yooka-Laylee, I think this expands the world and the characters. It brings them back. They're more fun to interact with. Again, it's a good game.
Yeah. It's not great.
It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's a good game.
And I think, we were talking about, we actually just recently played the new Legend of Zelda game.
Yes.
And it's like, that is exactly the original game, and I still went through and I beat the entire thing because I was having so much fun playing it.
And they modernized it, though. They added little tweaks to get rid of those annoyances from the old limitations.
Yes. That's not here, though. I think there are some modifications of things. You can save wherever you want to save. You can warp from anywhere on the map to make it a little easier to traverse. But overall, I just don't think it comes together as a perfect package. But I think there's people out there that are going to really enjoy it. Just know that there are a couple of problems here that might get irritating the more you play it. But folks, what do you think? Are you excited to play the new Yooka-Laylee game, or are you not? Let us know. Yeah,
let us know in the comments
below.